the Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Radio Scotland.
This is an audio download about Scottish football from BBC Scotland. I'm Kenny McIntyre. For terms and conditions of use, please go to our website, bbc.co.uk/sportscotland. Today's podcast is taken from BBC Radio Scotland's Sportsound programme of Monday the 12th of December. I was joined by Richard Wilson, Billy Brown and Scott McDonald as we looked ahead to Tuesday's Premiership action at Celtic Park and Pittodrie. We look back on Saturday's big game at Ibrox, where the spotlight was definitely on the new Hearts head coach Ian Cathro. Billy Brown has some very strong opinions on that appointment. There was also a bit of a debate on the decisions made by referee John Beaton. A couple of big calls from him during that game. Let's start with the big one, the decision by referee John Beaton not to award Hearts what would have been the opening goal. If you want to look, the footage is on our Twitter account at BBC Sportsound and on the BBC Sport Scot Facebook page. We'll be joined by a former referee in a few minutes' time, but our pundits have had a look. Let's get their thoughts. Richard, describe what happened, and did the match officials call it correctly?
Well, Kenny, as Rob explained or described in his commentary there, West Foderingham saves a shot, the ball comes back out, it's played back to, I think it's Callum Patterson. Now, in that phase of play, Don Cowie has come off the field, he's gone into the goal mouth, and then he's come back on. Now, before the ball is played to Cowie, before the ball's crossed him, he's back on the field, and he's about a metre from the goal line. Now, I know there's been some contention about this on social media, and people have been quoting various different rules. I think Rule 11 is the one that's been getting passed around about a player leaving the field of play. But my understanding of that situation is when Cowie was off the field, he is treated as being on the goal line. If any player is off the field and considered to be interfering with play, he's considered to be on the goal line. So if a defender had gone off the pitch at that point, he would be considered to be on the goal line and therefore playing people onside. Cowie's gone off the pitch, he's considered to be on the goal line at that point. However, he's come back on, and he's come back on before the ball is played to him. That's the key point. If the ball had been played towards him while he was still off the pitch and he'd come on and got it, he would have been in an offside position, because he would be considered to be on the goal line at that point, regardless of where he got the ball. But he'd come back on the pitch before it was played to him. Therefore, it's a different phase of play. Therefore, the fact that he'd gone off the pitch and come back on is no longer relevant. It's where he is when the ball is played to him. So having taken that part out of it, when the ball is played to him, the television footage is not level, but it would appear that Cowie is roughly a metre from the line. It would appear that West Fotheringham's pretty much on his line, and Lee Wallace would look to be certainly in a position to be roughly level with Cowie. So therefore, the right decision probably would have been to allow the goal to stand, because at that point Cowie was actually onside when he got the ball. I know there has been this discussion on social media about what happens when a player goes off and comes back on. I took a bit of time looking at this today. That's my understanding of the rules. The interesting bit, I think, is it would appear, I think from the footage, that the linesman or the assistant referee has begun to go towards the halfway line as though he's giving it, and then he stopped. So I'm not sure whether it was the referee that maybe questioned it or maybe asked him what he thought. We're not quite sure what's happened at that point. But however, my understanding of the situation is that it's because he's come back on and the ball's played to him, that negates the fact that he'd gone off the field and come back on. So therefore, it's just a straight decision. Was he level with the Rangers defender with Foderingham on the line, or was he not?
Billy and Scott, you both had a look. Did the officials get it correct on Saturday?
No, they didn't get it correct. I think you've got to say that the goal should have stood. I must say, it was a very, very difficult situation, you know, to see it, both from the referee and the linesman's point of view. But he did look like he was onside when he scored the goal. When the ball was played to him, he was definitely onside. Lee Wallace was playing him on. So, you know, the goal should have stood. Now, I've got to say that I've been there a lot of times and that's happened. You know, and
what are you suggesting?
One of the things I would have said at the time, it would have stood at the other end.
Oh, come on!
I'm glad you said that.
Billy, do you believe that? Do you believe that? Honestly.
Well, I did. All the years I did, but no, they got it wrong. I can understand why they got it wrong. It was a difficult one.
I think that's an interesting point, because it's such a complicated situation. A lot of bodies in the box, in the way of maybe the line of sight and all these other things. If there is an element of doubt, I suppose you have to go with the element. You've got to be sure before you give a decision.
Yeah, I think
what's
that's
happened
correct.
with giving the attacking team the advantage?
Said a striker last night.
No, but,
No,
but that's,
that's-
you
yeah, no,
know,
I
I mean, I
know
know
that's a
for
fair
the
point.
offside, you know, it needs to be clear daylight, But for me, it's a goal. We can all see it now. It's easily, you know, it's easy to say it once the situation's passed. But I think John Beaton's, you know, he's going to have to stop asking his linesmen for their opinions, because they're not getting it right. That's the second time in a few weeks he's had that, you know, decision incorrect. And well, I'll bring up, you know, my sort of situation a couple of weeks ago at Dundee away, the goal that never was. Obviously, our manager's now had a suspension for it, but John was in charge that day, and his linesman let him down that day also. And I think his linesman's let him down here again over the weekend.
Lots of people getting in touch. Lots of people with an opinion on this. We'll get to the texts and tweets shortly. We're joined on the line now by former referee Charlie Richmond. Good evening to you, Charlie. You've had a look at the footage. Should the goal have been awarded?
Yes, it's a goal. It's a goal every day of the week. Richard, totally, I can't add anything more to than listening to what Richard's explanation about it was. He's totally summed it up. And also, just taking on to what Scott said, the benefit of the doubt goes to the attacking team. So therefore, it's a goal. The only thing, having looked at the clip and looking on, is that John goes across to Stewart, and there's a conversation. Is John trying to sway the assistant to say, look, I think it's a goal, or has Stewart swayed him to say, no, he's offside? But when you look at the exactly, Stewart is saying it's offside, it's offside, it's offside. So maybe John's in the opinion it's not offside, and it goes back. The ultimate decision is the referee. It would have been a brave referee to overrule his assistant and give the correct decision.
What about Don Cowie leaving the field of play? What do the rules say on that?
Momentum, players' momentum. Don has went across the goalkeeper. Billy will back me up 100% here. Coaching point: get across the defender, get across in front of the goalie, and he's anticipating a tap in. And his momentum's took him off the field of play. He's no delayed. He's no done anything else. He's just turned, spinned, and back round. But as Richard says, when the ball is played, he is still in an onside position. It's not as if he has been in an offside position, came to get the ball, and played it for there.
Right, lots of people getting in touch, Richard. Colin Marshall having a go at you. Richard, you have made that up. Wallace was a few inches from the goal line when the ball played, not a metre.
Yeah, well, you can see it here. I mean, we've got it in freeze frame right here. He's probably half a metre away from the line. But we can't tell from that angle.
It's difficult.
We can't tell that angle where Cowie is, though.
No, I mean,
you know,
we're surmising. Use the goal line as your guide,
Yeah.
And it certainly looks as though Cowie is further out than Wallace is at that point, whether it's a metre, half a metre, or whatever. Certainly more than a couple of inches.
I think where the linesman probably gets spooked is how quickly Wallace gets out to close the ball, and then once Cowie does then put the ball in the net, he looks like he's in an offside position. But when the ball is actually kicked from Patterson, he's clearly in line. Well, I would say he's probably more than in line with Wallace in the pictures.
Yeah, I must support the referee here, you know, because we're sitting discussing it and looking at it, and there are doubts, certainly.
Yeah, but the linesman's
There are
there to
doubts.
get them ones right and wrong. That's what they're there for. You know, they're not there to not be there to not make decisions. They need to make the decisions, and they need to make the correct ones. There's been a lot this year, and I'm not gonna slate them because it's a very difficult job. And Charlie, you know as well as I do, I've gave you a hard time over the years, but
No, Charlie, you haven't, no.
No, I wasn't worried about you tonight, Scott. I was actually worried about Billy.
Well, yeah.
I was bringing over my shoulder again.
oh, that's
I've
good to know.
mellowed, Charlie, I've mellowed.
But, you know, they're there to get these decisions right, and, you know, the more they get them wrong, the more pressure that's going to be heaped on them. And once again, it's a decision that's not
It's
correct.
interesting, though, but it's one of those ones where we've gone over this discussion a whole many times about whether referees speak after a game or whatever. But this is one of those situations where maybe if there was a clarification about the rule and what the situation was, OK, it then becomes a judgment call for the assistant referee and the referee whether the player's offside or not. But if there was clarification about the rule then that might have stopped there being all this discussion
do you really
in the
think
aftermath.
But the clarification, guys, the clarification comes in. If there's any doubt in your mind, you give it to the attacking team. If there's any doubt, if you're showing to yourself, is he onside or offside? If there's any doubt in it, you give the advantage to the attacking team.
It's interesting to hear you say that.
Of the game many years ago.
Yeah, well, obviously I'm delighted to hear that from obviously an ex-referee now. But in terms of when you're out in the middle, it's easier to say that than actually make that decision at that moment in time. Now you'll tell me differently, but when there's big calls like that, and you're not 100% sure, and with what Billy touched on, possibly being the away team, natural human nature is to not be sure, is to not give it rather than give it.
One of the bits of advice I got, Scott, was even though you're a referee in the middle, make your mind up about the decision yourself with regard to in your own mind.
Yeah.
So see when that ball goes in, am I looking for an offside flag, or am I looking for an offside flag, or am I not looking for a flag? And see where John is. John's approximately, 10 yards out. He's looking across.
In a good position. Was he in a good position?
He was in a good position, yeah. He's got a good position, and he's obviously looking at the Hearts playing the ball across, but in his wider vision, he's got that. And when the ball goes across, he's thinking to himself, I should see a flag here, or no, I shouldn't see a flag here. You should be making a conscious decision himself. Can you imagine him being on a game yourself, and that incident happened? That was a bit of advice that I always got.
It's funny you say that, though, because I'll bring up the incident again in our game a few weeks ago with John.
Yeah, because you said it was a goal.
No,
so everywhere you saw it.
Well,
it was a goal.
And in terms of
2 feet over the line.
Well, in terms of what was said to me, and I don't like going out on the limb and saying what referees sort of tell you at the time, but he said to me it looked a goal for me. But the linesman wasn't sure. So, if it looks a goal for you, then surely you've got to make that decision then and give the goal.
Yeah,
that sort of it upset me and it upset the manager because that was the statement that was given at half time and it wasn't given.
Yeah. Isn't the assistant referee in a better position to judge an offside more often than not? I don't know.
He didn't give the
offside, but anything that happens in line with him.
It was more I don't know decision rather than an actual decision from the linesman.
Charlie, there's a couple here I want to put to you. Joseph Henry on Twitter. I watched that match on TV. Refereeing was scandalous. Lots of other people getting in touch. John in Inverness. We need video evidence. How many bad decisions are made every week? Let's stop slating the rest and get it sorted. And another one here from Bruce. You've been discussing this for 10 minutes. The referee had 10 seconds. Are you saying the referee is poor or biased or corrupt? Mistakes in the workplace are made every day. Rangers have done well recovering from the Hearts defeat 10 days ago. Beating Hearts and Aberdeen 6 points from 9 is fine.
That's a fair assessment
from me.
I think that's a fair assessment.
But I want to ask. I want to get this from a referee, Scott, about balancing up the books, if you like, be it in one game or be it over the course of a season. There's I want to talk about the decision to book Jamie Walker for diving, Charlie. John Beaton booked him for diving. I want at this point clearly to you. One of our listeners, Colin Marshall on Twitter, is asking, was the Walker booking retribution from Beaton for being conned by Walker on match day 1? What's your answer to that?
It looked that way. It looked that way the way he gave that decision. He pondered, he thought, he looked, and then he went and gave it because it's the wrong decision. And see, sometimes as a referee, if you are, can I use the word, looking for a player, looking for the incident, you actually go the other way.
But that's wrong, isn't it?
Yes. John has went about it the wrong way.
Have you done it?
I remember a guy, Donovan, with Dundee United, had went down in the box for a penalty. I never gave the penalty. Looking back, he went to the media and slated me. Absolutely left me without a name. And the next game, I ran by him and said, come to my dressing room and have a go at me by all means, but don't take the cheap shot in the media.
Did John Beaton just think he dived?
Yeah, I mean, I think if
that's a free kick every day of the week, Billy.
It was. There's no doubt about it. It was a wrong decision. But did he just not think he dived? I mean, referees are human beings.
He'd have made it quicker. If he'd have thought he'd have dived, he'd have made the decision quicker.
I mean, following your logic through, Charlie, what you're effectively saying is John Beaton knew that was a foul, but then booked the player for diving. You really think that would have been the thought process for him?
I would say the concept, he wouldn't think it was a foul. With regards to that, he would look at it as if to say, "Oh no, I'm going the other way now."
Look,
if there was doubt, he would go the other way.
The other side of that is that Jamie Walker's going to have to put up with that, whether it's John Beaton that's the referee or other referees.
Why?
Well, because of the incident at the start of the
So
season.
you saying he deserves it?
I'm not saying he deserves it, but he's going to have to understand.
Unlucky.
And you know what? It's unfortunate that happened on the weekend for him because we've all seen it now. And yeah, it's not a yellow card, but there's been other incidents at times where he hasn't got the foul in games that probably we haven't seen because of that incident within the first game of the season. Because there's a reputation now that precedes himself because it was blatantly not a foul, that one, because he dived when the ball was when there was clearly no contact and it looked really bad, and he did mug the referee on the day.
He's, you know, I've worked with Jamie, and he isn't a diver. He doesn't usually do that.
What about the one in the first game, though? What
the
Celtic? What did he do?
He dived there. There's no doubt about it. And
was he anticipating the contact that never came?
It's a possibility.
Well, probably, but I don't think that's in his makeup to do that. I don't think it is.
What
I think
was he
he's
doing on Saturday then? Was he anticipating the contact that came?
It was a foul. He got
It's
fouled
a foul
on
every
Saturday.
day, and that's where the referee has got to judge the.
I think John Beaton just got it wrong, didn't he? He just got it wrong.
I think that's right. I mean, we should say that Hearts. I mean, a player being booked for simulation is one of the perhaps even the only yellow card that you can appeal. And we should say that Hearts. The intention is for Hearts to appeal. They will submit an appeal on Jamie Walker's behalf for that one, as will Partick Thistle for Adi Aziz in the game on Friday night. So I think that's an indication of it is a difficult judgment call, I think, for a match official. Diving seems to be the most difficult one, I think, to call, whether it's deliberate, whether there's been a foul or not. I mean, we're talking here and we're absolutely all clear that Jamie Walker was fouled. It shouldn't have been a booking. Same incident for Partick Thistle on Friday night. But it's clearly a difficult one for referees to judge, I think, whether a player is dived or not. And I don't know if there's an answer to that. I don't know if there's...
I think what I merited my judgment on was if there was contact, then you're in the grey area with regards to that, and if there was no contact, then you would make it for there. It's better sometimes to err on the side of oh right, okay, there was contact there, but maybe he has. But when there's concept of there's no clear contact with regards to there, then you're safer. Is that the right word to use? You're safer to go in. Whereas if John had just played on Saturday, then we probably would have just said, oh right, it was a foul and that was it. But to go from one extreme to the other, from giving no foul to a caution for simulation. So see where I'm coming from the refereeing point of view.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, there were two difficult decisions. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And unfortunately, called them both wrong. Unfortunately.
Sometimes when you're performing well and you're doing well in domestically and you're doing well in Europe, then there's an anticipation that you've got to get those decisions right.
But the thing is, for me, where the linesman is now, it's more the linesman for me than John in this case with the offside. The linesman's he's directly across, and you can probably see that Lee Wallace is probably in his vision more so than Cowie. So
why has John Beaton went across to have a conversation with him?
Well, that's the interesting one. That is the interesting question, because if there is no flag raised, then why has he gone over to have that conversation? If the linesman hasn't raised his flag, then by all means, then it should be a goal. And it should be just...
Yeah, Michael Booth on Twitter. Chad, I want this one thing too. Michael Booth on Twitter. Football really needs referee mics like they have in rugby so we can hear what their reasoning is, clearing up decisions.
No, you don't.
No.
We need a filter, I think.
You've got two guys in the studio there that would be beep. No, but what I will touch on for an interesting point, gentlemen, I don't know if you're aware, but in the World Club Championships in, I think they're in China at the moment, they are trialling retrospective television for referees. There is one video assistant referee who has got a monitor pitch side, and they are looking at game-changing decisions. Penalty, yes or no. Goal, yes or no. Offside, yes or no. So it'll be interesting to see what the feedback we get from FIFA on that, and then we can maybe gradually bring it in. Rugby rugby's great because the gentlemen, now don't get me, they're starting to get a few sweary words coming in because of the professional side of it, but if you put mics into the television, live to the audience, it might work in the favour of hearing the industrial language, but then we maybe say, well, why are you not cautioning him? Why are you not sending him off? And that concept with regards to there. So I think it would be it wouldn't be a good line to go down, or it would be a very,
Charlie,
very
are the referees for that? Are they for decisions being made at the side of the park? You as a referee, would you just want to referee the game?
Anything that can help get the right decision must be embraced with open arms. If it works, then fine. If it's tried and it doesn't work, then at least you've tried it.
Mm-hmm.
The English FA have went down the lines with the goal line technology. And at the present moment in time, we saw yesterday that it worked. So we haven't got the money in Scotland. That's the problem.
No,
we don't have the money to bring in certain things that the English FA do. But if it works for you, and if you go down the video technology, rerun 30 seconds, there's the decision. Keep playing while the video referee has a look at it, and then go back and give the decision.
I've always been of the opinion, Charlie, the only video evidence you should use is the ones they're using in England. I think to use everything else, I mean, the game's going to stop, isn't it? It's got to
stop. You're just talking about penalties, yes or no.
Start.
Yeah, but you're talking about penalties, yes or no. Offside, yes or no. And effectively goal or no.
But now, if a throw-in goes to the wrong team and they take it quickly and score,
you're not going to go down foul. So you've got to bring it in with small decisions.
Yeah,
small decisions.
I think when you're talking offside, you're talking offside within scoring goal. Yeah, exactly. Yes. You're not talking like near enough the halfway line and raising the flag. We're talking about when there's actual goals scored.
Rangers is a perfect example.
Yeah.
It's a perfect example. Mm-hmm. There's a goal been scored wrongly. So bring it back and look at and review it with respect to there.
Right, Charlie, there's a few people. It should have been 10 on Twitter. John Beaton saw it, was Jamie Walker, and took the chance to book him. And you think that is what happened?
Subconsciously, that's in his mind, yeah.
Right.
Looking at it for that point.
Right. Tom says is not the main story from the game at Ibrox how well Rangers have done despite being written off 2 weeks ago to discuss the game and also Ian Cathro's input as well.
That's fair enough. We're going to get to that, guys. Yep. We're going to get to that. But this could change the game. It's a 0-0 at this point. Let's not forget that. And goals change games. And then if Hearts go 1-0 up, then it's a different type of game. Now, fair play. Rangers were more than well worth the win on the weekend, but this, if it was at the other end, what would we be saying then as well? And the Hearts go up the other end and score.
Scott, let's look at your point of view as a player and me as a referee.
Yeah.
You go down 1-0 and you say, "Oh, here we go again."
Yeah, well, that's what happened. That's what happened at Dundee the other week.
As a referee, the home team go down 1-0. The crowd start to go on the back.
Right, hold on a minute, Charlie. Let's try and nail you on this. There's Ian and Leith, and Billy suggested, I don't know if it was just tongue-in-cheek or not, Billy can explain himself. Ian and Leith, I'm a Hibs fan, but Billy Brown is only saying what every fan in the country has known for time immemorial. You don't get decisions in Glasgow. Hearts were robbed. The only people who pussyfoot around the fact are the powers that be and the media. End of, says Ian and Leith. So, Billy, do you genuinely believe when you take a Hearts team, a Kilmarnock team to Ibrox or Celtic Park, you're not going to get the decisions you should get?
Yeah, I think referees are human beings. If you go through, Rangers go through and brought down in the penalty box and the referee doesn't give it, the next time they go down, the crowd's in that much uproar that it's very, very difficult for referees. It's difficult to referee these games at Parkhead and Ibrox. Now, I'm not saying the referees are bent or crooked, but I'm just thinking they're human beings and it's a natural reaction sometimes. And I don't think I'm wrong there. If you ask any football supporter...
Same at Tynecastle then? If you're playing, say, Partick Thistle, would Hearts get the decisions? We know what that stadium's like?
Probably.
Yeah?
Probably,
It's also worth remembering that it's part of human nature, part of football. Fans will always remember the decisions that go against them, particularly if they don't believe that they should have gone against them, rather than any that have gone for them. I mean, I think there is that perception as well.
But when maybe not so much Hearts, I'm maybe doing a disrespect here to some of the teams, but when you go to Ibrox or Celtic Park, you are setting up to defend. The majority of the play will be in the box, and it will be decision after decision after decision, and there'll come a time when the referees think, oh, that's not a penalty, that's not a penalty, that's a penalty, or the third penalty might have been the least of the three penalties, etc., etc. With regard to that, does the crowd influence your decision? I wouldn't go as far to say that.
Any instances, Charlie, where the tables have been turned and a player has got his own back on you?
Oh, James, I would love to Gary Mason at Dunfermline. I would love to, if you're listening tonight, Gary.
What happened?
I was at Dunfermline. I think it was Dunfermline Clyde. I'd been out for 13 weeks with my ankle ligament damage, and I come back and I was running. The ball had transferred from one side of the park to the other, and I was like a 1.1 Costa pulling a caravan, going from one end to the other. And I'm sure Gary just clicked my heels. I'm sure
Deliberately?
I think he saw me going across in front and he goes, Ken, I'll just have a wee shot with this big fella. And he clicked my heels. And I turned up, and a couple of somersaults, turned back up, and because I had been out for about 13 weeks, I just turned round and I says, what are you doing? And he tried to put me out again. And you know that way the wry smile comes onto your face, as if to say, well, I didn't really mean that. I would love to find out. I would love to find out if he did. And see if he did, fair dues to him.
Did any managerial team put more pressure on you than Billy Brown and Jim Jeffries? They must have been a nightmare.
No, James, Billy, that's why when I said at the beginning of the show, to hear Billy Brown's voice over your ear again. Billy's the only assistant manager in Scotland, probably the world, that man-marks the fourth official. There all the time. I remember at Time Castle, we turned round and I was like, I says, boo, and he's like there beside him. But there was one time with Billy and Jimmy we were at Time Castle, and something had happened, and Big Jeffries just runs out onto the park with his horns up in the air, screaming and shouting and screaming and shouting. And I says to him, I says, come off the park. And he turned around and he's saying, how? I says, because you've got these nice new training shoes. See the white training shoes? You'll get them all dirty. Now come off. And he just totally killed the scenario.
Jim was uncontrollable, really. He was. I used to get tarred with the same brush, Charlie.
I think we'll leave it there, Charlie. Thanks very much indeed for joining us in sports. And it's former referee Charlie Richmond. Lots of people getting in touch. Keep them coming. Text us 80295 on Twitter at BBC Sportsound, or tweet me at BBC Kenny Mac. The match was, of course, Billy, Ian Cathro's first match in charge of Hearts. We've been saying in the studio, it's hard to remember an appointment in Scottish football that's generated so much debate.
Well, I think it generated a lot of debate because there was nothing else happening last week, really, because I didn't think it was such a major thing. You know, really, I've got a question to ask about this. What happened to the Hearts dynasty? When Craig Levein got the job at Hearts, he says that there wouldn't be speculation when Robbie Neilson went or got sacked or whatever, because there was a coaching plan in place that the next person down the line would move up. Well, 2.5 years, and last week we had, and the week before that, we had all the speculation who was going to get the job. I don't know what happened to the dynasty.
Well, I think the succession plan was altered when Jack Ross left. I think the Jack Ross was brought in to take the development team to overlap with the
Jack
first
got
team.
the sack, didn't he?
And Jack left. John Daly's now in that position, but there's obviously been the judgment call that he's maybe not ready for that step up, so the succession plan has altered. I do know they think very highly of, is it Liam Fox, who's out at Cowdenbeath, again, I think that at Hearts they think very highly of him, so it might be that he's part of succession planning for the future. But I think the timing of Robbie's departure and the timing of Jack Ross's departure when he left the club is what altered that succession plan.
Yeah, well, why didn't they try and persuade Robbie to stay then?
I think Robbie's mind was made up to go and try his hand in England.
Was it? So you don't ask him to stay at all? Then?
Well, I don't know if they did ask him to stay or not, but I think they understood very quickly that Robbie's mind was set on moving.
Yeah. I mean that was part of the master plan in the first place. You know that there would be this dynasty set up.
But you're going to have a dig, aren't you? The way it ended for you and
No,
Gary
I'll tell you
Locke,
what.
but you're going to have a dig at the current regime at
No, I'm
Hearts.
trying to say that the speculation wouldn't have happened if the plan had been followed through. That's what I'm saying. You know, I've nothing against Ian Cathro. Ian Cathro will live or die with the results he gets. He's got Craig Levein there. I mean, let's be perfectly honest about it. Tommy Wright should have got that job. But Tommy Wright was never going to come to the Hearts or be asked to come to the Hearts under the present regime there.
But has that regime not worked? But has that model not worked?
I can't say it hasn't worked, because it has worked. It has worked. But, you know, the Hearts supporters now are back on track to where the Hearts were and where the Hearts should be. They're near the top of the league, and all credit to the people that's did that. But they now want to stay where they are. And to bring in a manager that's untested at all, I'm not saying the guy will not do it. I'm nothing against him at all. I think the Hearts supporters would have wanted an experienced man in that position. But the current regime doesn't allow for that, because a director of football, Tommy Wright's not going to work with him.
Jamie Fullerton, Chris Boyd, Stephen Craigan all questioned the appointment. You've been in this very studio before saying there are pundits that go too far, make it too personal. I know you heard Chris Boyd in the programme last week. What have you made of the reaction? Do you think it has been over the top? Do you think they're right to question it?
Yeah. I mean, Chris Boyd has an article in a daily newspaper, you know, and he's got to comment on what's happening. And him knowing Ian Cathro would be in a coaching course beside him, gave his opinion on Ian Cathro. Surely he was entitled to do that, right? He was entitled to do that. And I think he had a lot of valid points there, Chris.
Yeah, a lot of the negatives were taken out of it rather than some of the positive notes that he did say in the actual article, which you're always going to do, though.
No, I don't think anybody last week denied that Ian Cathro on the training ground is good. But that's very, very small part of the job. Part of the job of being manager and running the team is being a man manager, is being able to go into that dressing room at half-time and sort situations out. Now, Ian Cathro has no experience of doing that. That's all Chris Boyd was saying, and quite rightly so. Now, time will tell if he's got the capabilities to do that. You know, just because he was young, everybody made a play at it. But really, that lad has never been in this situation that he's in at the moment. Now, luckily enough, Craig Levein's there. Craig Levein was always going to get Ian Cathro into a job there somewhere. He wanted him the last time. And Craig Levein will be a big influence on Ian Cathro. Bound to be. He was a big influence on Robbie Neilson.
But that's probably a good thing, is it not?
I'm not saying that's what I'm saying. That's one of the assets they've got. And the system they've got, it'll always be a young manager that Craig Levein can mentor. Because, let's be honest about it, if you've been in Scottish football for the last 10, 15 years, that Hearts team is a carbon copy of the teams that Craig Levein's had over the years.
Well, let me
no
put
question
that
of that.
The BBC weren't at the game, right? But I looked at the Sun match report. It says, hit and hope, long balls, launched throw-ins and some uncompromising tackles. We're going to talk about the tackles in a couple of minutes, actually. The brave new revolutionary Hearts world of rookie manager Ian Cathro kicked off at Ibrox on Saturday, and frankly, for the most part, it felt more like the old Wimbledon's crazy gang style than anything that remotely resembled visionary football. What does that say to you?
Yeah, well, I don't think Ian Cathro might be good, but I don't think after 2 days he would have that much influence on Saturday's game whatsoever. I think maybe just on the day, you know, Rangers were playing well and Hearts were having to get the ball up the park quickly. I don't think for a minute that was Ian Cathro setting out to do that on Saturday.
Do you think he'll get to change the style of play?
Eventually, but I don't think it will be till next season. I think it's going to be very difficult to be able to do it during a season. I mean, you'll have a good, you know, obviously the winter break comes at a perfect time for him. They'll probably go away. I wouldn't imagine they'll get time off with a new manager, but wait and see. But he'll go in and they'll take him somewhere and he'll want to work on what he wants to work on, I'd imagine.
I mean, I think
wouldn't change the Hearts system.
He said himself, I was at his press conference last Thursday, and he said himself, that was his message to the players when he first met them. The team's in third place at the moment. Robbie's just left with the Manager of the Month award. He was not coming into a situation that required him to rip the status quo up and do things dramatically differently. That would be counterproductive. He was coming in to just keep the show moving along, taking it easy in terms of any changes. He might tweak one or two things and do one or two things his own way, but he's not going to be radically different. And this is part of, I think, the hysteria that's been drawn up by his appointment. There was never any suggestion that Ian Cathro was going to come in and manage radically different from any other manager. He said it himself. You just have to do the job. The unorthodoxy in his appointment was the fact that he's never played, he's 30, and he's spent the last sort of 10 years on a pathway to becoming a manager, but he's not played the game, so it's a different pathway from normal. That's the unorthodox element of it. Not what he was going to do, just his journey to get there. But I think in terms of, I think there's a bit of a fallacy about this Craig Levein aspect of it. He's there as a mentor, he's there as an influence. Robbie Neilson picked the team, Robbie Neilson picked the tactics. Craig had an influence on Robbie, so therefore he's got an influence on that. But he wasn't telling Robbie what to do. And that situation will be the same here. And also...
Billy's shaking his head.
Richard. You know, I'm not saying Craig Levein picked the team. I don't know that.
He doesn't.
But I can tell you something. If you were at any Hearts games, the lad, and it was Jack Ross to start with, he kept running down the dugout with pieces of paper with information to give to Robbie Neilson. If that's not an influence on the team, what is?
Well, he's got an influence on Robbie because, as we've said already, he's a mentor for a young coach, or a young head coach who's making his way in the game, and he would obviously therefore have an input on decisions. But ultimately, they were Robbie's decisions. I mean, there were definitely decisions. Just from the same way that you know anything from speaking to people in the game, from understanding the situation. I mean, there is no question that Robbie had the final say on transfers. Absolutely no question on that. And he had the final say on team selection and team tactics.
But was that not foreign to what Craig says when he first took over that day, that he was in charge of bringing players in?
He's in charge of the recruitment process up to the point where the decision is made whether a player comes in or not.
So Robbie just says yes.
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Okay.
So what Craig looks for the players and presents them to Robbie if Robbie doesn't want them.
Along with, is it John Murray who's the head, the chief scout there? So
John Murray. Well,
I don't really know what that was for.
No, I mean I've got to say that the Hearts thing's working. I have I'm obviously heavily involved because. You know, I was at Hearts a long time and it's a special place to be. You know, but when I read things and listen to people saying things that aren't correct, you know, that you don't know.
Like Richard.
Yeah, and
Tom
English last week.
We have a difference of opinion on that.
Saying what?
Well, Tom English was on about the fact that Ian Cathro had an influence on the first team at Newcastle, which, as far as I'm led to believe, and everybody I know, he did a video analysis. There's nothing wrong with that.
But Billy, he coached the Newcastle first team. I mean, he took instruction from Rafa Benitez. He
never prepared the team for a game.
I'm not saying he prepared the team, but he coached players on the training field every day.
Yeah, he did do that.
So he's not just the video analysis then.
Was he not the assistant at Valencia? Was he the
assistant? He was assistant. He was the assistant manager at Valencia and the assistant manager at Rio Ave. And I don't know where this. I don't know where this
beforehand as well.
Yeah, I don't know where this fallacy has come from on the Newcastle thing, because you've said he's a video analyst.
Boyd said the same thing. He's obviously speaking to people in the game as well, Richard.
He has that skill set, but there is no question, and you've just agreed with me there, there's no question he was working with the first team players on the training ground every day. I'm not saying he picked the tactics, that's the manager's job. I'm not saying he decided how they were going to do things, but he worked with the first team players every day.
Listen, I'm not here to have a go at Ian Cathro. Ian Cathro's got the job now, and he stands or falls by the results that the club get.
Yeah.
I was just explaining to you how I think the system works there. You know, you don't think that. What do you think Craig does like?
Well, I think, as I said, he's a mentor, he's an influence, he's the director of football, he's running the football department. Of course he has an influence on things. I think we're agreeing that he's an influence on things. I'm not sure. Are you saying to me that he makes all the decisions and the head coach just sits there and says yes? Is that what you're saying? I'm saying he's an influence, and I'm saying that he's an influence in all aspects of the coaching.
I think Robbie Neilson picked a team.
Yeah.
But I don't think that many teams would go in the park without Craig's okay.
Let's talk about the style of play, Richard, because you've had a look today at the footage from the game. A few challenges that a lot of Rangers fans have been telling us upset them on Saturday. Yeah,
I mean, I wasn't at the game, so I don't know about the match report reference, but there were certainly two isolated incidents. I think it was Joom on Andy Halliday, seemed to catch Andy Halliday after passing the ball. His legs seemed to carry through. And there certainly seemed to be a kick out from, I think it was Rossi on Barry Mackay after the two had come together off the pitch and were lying on the ground. So certainly, obviously, a couple of incidents. I mean, they happen in games. I don't know if the inference is that Hearts were playing a certain way, but there certainly was those two incidents in the match.
How much do you believe Mark Warburton needed the wins against Aberdeen and Hearts?
Yeah, I think he did. I mean, there was an element of pressure growing after the losing at Tynecastle and putting in the level of performance that Rangers did do that day. And he said it himself after the game. It wasn't a good enough performance at Tynecastle. I think Rangers' away form, particularly against the Aberdeen and Hearts, will concern him. But you have to say that Rangers have turned their fortunes around in these last two games against Aberdeen and Hearts. They've been very impressive. I didn't see the 90 minutes on Saturday, but I'm led to believe that's probably Rangers' best performance of the season. Certainly key individuals had a very good game. I think pressure was building on him not because Rangers fans expected to be challenging for the title. I don't think any Rangers fan did expect that, but I think they expected the team to show signs of development and progress from last season, and that stalled a bit. It would appear as though he's found again a way to win matches, and that's what he has to do. I still don't think there's a huge room for error. He needs to finish second. It's going to be a tight challenge with Aberdeen and Hearts. And one thing the three of them share is that they're strong at home and they're not so convincing away from home. And that's something that all three managers will want to address. I don't think there'll be a huge scope for him to do things in January, but he's just got to keep winning football matches and he's got to get Rangers to a point where they're second in the league. That's his target for this season, and that's what's been set to him.
I think you've got to give Mark Warburton a bit credit for Saturday, because when they played at Tynecastle the other week there, they got a real doing. And the way they played that game, the tippy-tappy football from the back that was easy for Hearts to stop, he's changed it on Saturday. Now, I didn't think that Mark would have changed it, because I think he's got a football philosophy. But he changed it and he went a wee bit more direct. And if they did that at Tynecastle, it would have been a different game.
I
think
think
you must give him credit.
But I think that's from the last 15 minutes of that game. I think when Ghana come on, I think that's a major influence on how he did play on the weekend.
There was also an element of that, I think, against Aberdeen as well, where they were prepared to go long at points in that game. So I think you're right. I think he has changed things up a little bit from he's still playing the same formation to an extent and the same players and the positions you would expect him to be in. But there has been a willingness, I think, to go a little bit longer from the back at points during a match.
I just think with that football philosophy, when it's not working, your job as a professional manager is to change it. And at Tynecastle, up to the last 15 minutes, they didn't change it. You know, when you're getting pressed like that, you've got to knock two or three in behind and get the other team back and get them turning so you can squeeze the game up a wee bit. Now, I think on Saturday they did that a lot more, you know, and it worked for them. And all credit to them. You know, he got a lot of stick after the game at Tynecastle. I think on Saturday he showed he's got a wee bit something about him.
Just finally on the debate on referees, Jimmy in Edinburgh. You can't have it both ways. He's saying either the referee is dishonest or he is not. They cannot allude to dishonesty and say they're not accusing the referee of dishonesty. Anyway, if the goal had been given, it could have changed the game, says Jimmy. Rangers would probably have won 5-1, according to him.
Well, that's fair enough.
You're not saying it's dishonesty. No. You're saying it's human nature to, if there's pressure on you at a certain ground, to make big decisions. And also, as Charlie was saying
Billy's saying that. I'm not saying that.
You're not saying that.
I'm not saying that.
He's an ex-Celtic player, remember.
I'm still playing.
But okay, Billy, but you're also saying, are you agreeing with what Charlie Richmond was saying in regards to John Beaton, that in the back of his mind would have been Jamie Walker from the first day of the season when he was making that decision, or is that not the case?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I think, you know, you've just got to say that he thought Jamie dived. You know, whether it was in the back of his mind, only he could tell you that. But he got it wrong. I mean, he's entitled to get things wrong, and he got that one wrong.
Tomorrow night on Sports, and we'll have Premiership action for you. Celtic up against Hamilton Accies and Aberdeen at home to your side, Motherwell, Scott. It's a tough game in prospect. I'm reading today the Dons will be at full strength.
Lovely. That's great to know. By all accounts, obviously, they've had a lot of games as well, so hopefully that will take its toll. I think this is probably going to be their fourth game within the last sort of 10 days. But if they've got a full-strength team, they're always a tough team to play and tough place to go. But they've always been good matches in recent years, you know, Motherwell, Aberdeen, so hopefully it will be another good one tomorrow night, and hopefully we can walk away with a point.
At the moment, from what you've seen, who Who's the second best?
Well, we haven't played Aberdeen yet, so this is a catch-up.
Right.
We play them a couple of times now in the next couple of weeks. Obviously, Hearts have been, they've beaten us twice this year. Tynecastle's never a good place for us to go. They play a certain way. They've been, very good by all accounts this year. You'd still expect Rangers to finish second, and rightly so. With the budget that they have within the league, the outright second budget, best, second best in the league, they should finish second. And things are starting to come together for them now, and you would have to say that they're clear favourites for that. But it's been topsy turvy. There's been a couple of leagues this year. Obviously, we've got Celtic outright without, on their own, and then we've got that middle one with Aberdeen, Hearts, and Rangers all trying to push for second, and then there's the rest. I mean, don't get me wrong, St Johnstone are there or thereabouts as well, just behind them. But everyone else is looking at them to try and catch as the team to catch. But look, it's going to come down to a bit of consistency within the teams that can do that. It's as simple as that. They can get a couple of wins on the board, then they could certainly fly up the table.
What about the Celtic Accies game? As a player right now, can you look forward to a trip to Celtic Park?
In recent times for us, probably not. And I think everyone's looking at that now, especially the other 6 or 7 teams going, well, that's a home win, hopefully. And it's a chance to try and bridge a gap between us and Hamilton. I think any time, if you're looking at it from last week when we go 2 up, teams are going like, oh no, you've got to be kidding me on. How are they beating Celtic? And then obviously when the result comes in, I think there would have been a few fist pumps, within the rest of the league, which is, it's fair enough. That's just the way it is. Everyone's fighting for their place. And I think everyone's just expecting now, whenever anyone goes to Celtic, it's a gimme for Celtic because they've been playing that good. But there's still always a chance. If you go there with the right attitude and, they might have an off day, you're always well within your chance like we were last week. But obviously in the end, their quality took its toll in the end, and it was a fantastic finish from Rogic to beat us in the end of the day.
Was it last season that Hamilton went to Parkhead and won? Was that last season?
It was the season before.
The season before
under Neil, yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
So it can happen, but
This looks
you'd be brave to say it can happen at the moment because Celtic's sweeping everything before them, aren't they, really? And
it's incredible. The personnel's very much the same, apart from a couple of star signings.
They're playing,
but they look a different side, don't they?
Yeah, they're a lot more direct to start with. Ronnie's teams pass the ball, but they passed it back half the time. Brendan's teams pass the ball forward. Really, the only wee problem I can see coming for Celtic is that if I'm sitting there and I'm Lee Griffiths, having scored 40 goals last season, and I think he's scored, I don't know if he's scored as many as Dembele this season, but he's played half the games, that is going to become a wee problem. Now, Brendan's in that strong a position that he'll be able to handle that. Mm-hmm. But it is a problem. I mean, Lee Griffiths, the other night against Partick, was outstanding. And he scored a goal and made one, but I can't see anybody getting anywhere near them, and it's got to be very difficult for Hamilton.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the gap at the top, but I mean, I think there was only 3 points separating the bottom 7 sides at the weekend. I think it's now 4 points from Inverness at bottom to Kilmarnock in fifth, I think, Thistle at the bottom and to Kilmarnock. Does that effectively mean, Scott, that all the teams in that range there are in a relegation battle at the moment? Do you think it's going to be that close all the way through the season?
Well, we certainly hope not. For us, we're hoping we can, pull away from that. But as it's looking at the moment, we're in December now, and no one's sort of made that breakaway. So it's certainly looking to be the case. And it's just been a case of no team has been able to, pretty much. I think Inverness strung a couple of wins together and seen them go from bottom into the top 6 at one point, but then come back down again.
Before on Saturday, it needed the results to go a certain way because it needed a few goals swing in Inverness's favour, but they could have won and gone from bottom up to 6th.
Yeah,
which is why they needed some goal difference to go in their favour as well. So it was unlikely, but it was still possible for Inverness to move from the bottom to 6th in one day.
It's incredible, and I think it's going to take its toll as well. I think leading into that winter break, I think you would agree with me, Billy. It's important that you don't want to be that side lagging on the bottom going into that winter break. You want to be somewhere at a decent level going into that winter break with the right mentality, because going into that winter break being bottom is never going to be nice for whoever that may well be.
There's so little between the teams in that bottom area, though, isn't there?
Yeah, no, there's
You
not.
know, really, anybody that can string 3 victories together might not get relegated. You know, it's as tight as that. But, I mean, looking at it from the outside at the moment, I couldn't call who's going to be the ones that finish bottom there. And the ones that finish second bottom as well have got a problem, because it's either going to be Hibs or Dundee United.
Yeah.
And that's a very, very difficult game.
It could well go down to the split. You know, it could well be that it's that tight that all teams are still well within it.
Well, we're glad that's exciting, Scott, because as you say, Celtic are running away with it at the top. All the action from the football on Sportsound tomorrow night from 6:30.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Radio Scotland.
That's it. Thanks for listening. Don't forget you can receive all the latest sports news in our daily bulletins on Radio Scotland and at our website, bbc.co.uk/sportscotland.